Podcasting from Portland East to Portland West, from Big Pine Key to Pacific Beach, and from San Juan to Guam, this is All Across America. Alan, welcome to All Across America.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Alan, you are an Air Force electronics technician stationed on Wake Island in the South Pacific. Your career has almost been 25 years long. Maybe you could just talk us a little bit through your career in the Air Force to where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. Dating myself, I joined way back in 1997. Grew up in Western Washington, watched my older sister join the Air Force, and I was like, I'm going to do my own thing and try to do that balance between community college and work and social life. And begrudgingly, I finally came to my dad. I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to join the Air Force. So off I went to basic at San Antonio, and then off to technical school in Biloxi, Mississippi. And the Air Force, I requested it, but I went right back home. I was my first duty assignment was at McChord Air Force Base in Washington, and for what that's worth, that was kind of a blessing for two parts. I got there in August of '99, and my dad passed in January, so I was there for the family, and the gal that I'd been dating for all that time and writing letters, before we had email, my future wife. Got to be back home, and that worked out. So we got married in the fall of '99. I'm sorry, yeah, '99. So it all worked out there. And so into the electronics career field, my background's in meteorological and navigation systems, basically all the things that around the airfield that help pilots find the runway and the air traffic control to talk with them. So I did that for about 10 years in the Air Force, and then as you do okay in the military, they kind of make you do more leadership things to promote you out of those technical jobs. And that's what I did. So let's see, from McChord, I went to Las Vegas. I was in Las Vegas for 6 years. Then we took the family up to Alaska, had 3 wonderful years in Alaska, got to see all these different remote radar sites and just beautiful Alaska. And then from Alaska, we went to Hawaii. Again, just hardship tours after another. So while I was in Hawaii, I did have to go do a year in Korea. So I left the family in Hawaii, became a first sergeant. So taking care of people, health, morale, welfare, that kind of thing. Colorado Springs. And then we ended our career in Utah, where I retired in 2020 in the midst of COVID. And then we moved to Montana, and I did worked for a car dealership for about 4 years, and then had an opportunity. When I've learned in life, when you got to know when to say yes to opportunities. So a friend of mine that actually got me into ham radio reached out to me and said, "Hey, there's a opportunity at Wake." So kind of explored that, and here I am.
Oh, wow. So are you a civilian or active duty now?
Yeah, and so I did retire in 2020. So I'm Mr. Levy, and it's been the best assignment yet. So
Wow. So what's life like as Mr. Levy rather than Sergeant Levy? And obviously you're on Wake Island, which is owned and operated by the United States Air Force. How is that different?
Well, I mean, just there's so many acronyms and everything, with the military. And I remember about 6 months after I got out, somebody asked me about some job I used to have and what my MOS was. I'm like, I really had to think about it, because I'd like just kind of try to flush all those, trying to get out of, in the civilian mindset. But here on Wake, working, I'm a contractor for the government, and so it's, the government is our customer here. So
Okay.
it's interesting seeing that, because I saw it from the other side, when I was in the
Right.
active duty. Yeah, we wear many hats here as a contractor, trying to fulfill the role that what normally would be a huge endeavor for any military military unit that would have to do all the jobs here.
And so how many people are currently on Wake Island, both active duty, contract, whomever?
Yeah, so there's a contingent of military that just kind of are the host for any DVs or military that are transiting through, and overseeing the contract as well. So there are a handful of them, and then there's a couple different contractors on island. So a couple hundred. Sometimes it surges depending on construction projects or exercises, military things going on. But yeah, any given time, a few hundred people.
Few hundred people. Okay, so it's
Hmm.
a small,
Yeah,
tiny town, I guess.
yeah.
Are there traffic lights? I mean, what are the buildings like? What's it like on the island?
Yeah. How do you describe Wake Island? So, if anyone's like, so I'm not a geologist, I'm not a historian, but I'll try to give you. But so Wake Island is an atoll, so it's sitting
Yes.
on top of an old volcanic mound, and then the coral kind of builds up, and occasionally big waves come in and crush that coral and push it up on shore, and that's what kind of keeps the island going here. So it's kind of shaped in a V, and so the northern part, and it consists of three islands. So we have Peel, Wake, and then Wilkes Island. That largely, just a stone's throw from each other. It used to be a bridge connecting Wake and Peel, but it burned down like in 2003. But and that's where the Pan American, back in the 30s, that's where they had set up their hotel out here as they're transiting through, on the way to the Philippines. So it was a stopover there. But really interesting history if you ever want to dive into that. But yeah, so we have what we call our downtown is on the north end of Wake Island, and some dormitory style buildings, our dining facility. There's a clinic, with minimal support there. There's the Drifters Bar, that's open one day a
Oh,
week. Yeah,
one day, one day a week.
yeah. Well, we work typically 6 days a week here is just to get things done. So, yeah, no need for extra time for shenanigans. So,
Yeah,
uh,
fair enough.
yeah, but the island itself, those that V shape, it's very thin. So, I mean, you from one side of the ocean to the inside of the lagoon, it's a 5-10 minute walk, and you're across
Wow.
that spit of land there. So,
Right, right. And just for folks who may not know what an atoll is in the South Pacific, is as you described it, is essentially the island rings a lagoon, and the lagoon was what was once a volcano that receded
hmm
into the ocean, and then like it's just the very narrow land surrounding it that was once coral that various vegetation and soil has built up upon it. Am I describing it?
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And the folks that engineered how to get a runway on this back in the 30s, to well, initially there was a seaplane that landed in the lagoon, but I think it was in 1940 December. The military just commissioned, hey, let's start ramping up uh, some military presence out in the Pacific, and so they pushed folks out here to start building more structure, more infrastructure for military presence, and so that began, I think, in January, and then it was attacked in December 8th.
Wow. Okay. And it was occupied by the Japanese until 1945?
Correct. Yeah. So the Marines that were here, and some of the civilians, I think there was like 1100, about 1100 civilian contractors here with that effort. So that's not lost on me that, like, that's what is old is new.
Yeah.
They're out here in the middle of nowhere, and they were uh, asked to help defend the island. And so a lot of those civilians stepped up and helped defend the island. And I think it fell on the 23rd of December. So they put up a fight from December 8th to the 23rd. Most of those folks were sent off to POW camps, but there was a small contingent that were left here to help just build things for the Japanese. And then I think in 43, there was like 100 left, and they were executed on the island. There's a POW rock. If you look up on Wikipedia, there's a picture of the rock where one of the guys who was supposed to be executed snuck out, was able to creep out and go carve the initials of 98 and the date, POW. So just so that memory wasn't lost on the island, or for the world to know.
And Pan Am used it as a stopover for many years on their transatlantic flights.
That I'm an aviation buff. My dad, we were always going to air shows growing up. So I love things that fly in the sky, in the air. Like there's just, and it will never cease to amaze me. So I'm just trying to think, from the Wright brothers to the 1930s, like how far we progressed quickly with
Amazing.
aviation.
Yeah.
And now talking about like the Wild West of aviation, well, let's fly across this massive ocean to charter people across, instead of boating them across. So I don't know. I'm guessing must have started in Hawaii, because I think they stopped in Midway, and then uh, on their way to Guam, and then to the Philippines. So Wake Island's about 2/3 away to Guam as
Okay.
you're going from Hawaii. So you have Hawaii, Midway, Wake Island, and then Guam.
And so how do you get there? Like what is it like? We were talking before the show started that you do a couple months on, a month off. How do you get back and forth from Wake Island to Montana?
Yeah. So for my contract, I'm responsible for getting myself to and from Honolulu, and
Okay.
then from Honolulu, my company we get a charter that's provided by the government. So a charter that flies us out here. It's again that's 2,300 miles west of Honolulu, so it's about a 4 and
Wow.
some change hour flight, meals included. So
Oh, all right. That must be kind of a boring flight. I mean, it's completely blue ocean.
it
Can be
is, and
mesmerizing in a way, I guess.
that part just once you fly over, if you fly across east to west coast US, you're like, oh man, so the flyover states, it's a big country. You fly
Yeah.
across, they go to Hawaii, you're like, that's a lot of ocean. You keep going and you still haven't hit a major landmass. Like the ocean, Pacific Ocean is massive, just massive.
Yeah. 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 And you are now Wake Island is what, 600 miles from the nearest other island, inhabited island.
Yeah, so it's the northern end of the Marshall Islands. So there's some other inhabited islands down south, but yeah, we're not rowing a boat over to say hello anytime. Like we're definitely remote out here. Yeah.
And as we wished each other good afternoon and good morning before the show began, it's now 3 o'clock my time, East Coast, New York. You're at 7 a.m. Wake Island on May 1st. I'm April 30th. You're in the future a day ahead
Yeah,
on
I'm
May
I'm a day
1st.
ahead. That was a bit of a mind trip to get over the first couple times because you take off typically on a given day and then you land, 4 hours later the next day, and then going
Right.
backwards. Like when I left here, I left on a Saturday, arrived in Hawaii on Friday, and then got to my home on Saturday again. So um, yeah, the jet lag is a different effect. Just
Right.
plays a little bit different.
Yeah, gaining, losing time. And so what is the Air Force doing currently on Wake Island? Is it essentially, and maybe we can get into your job, but is it essentially basically almost as a placeholder mechanism that, hey, we've got a foothold on Wake Island, I guess as a stopover, should there be any incursions? Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so I again, the old is new. The presence that we had back in the 40s to kind of push into the Pacific and have a foothold because we weren't certain about what the relationships at that time with Japan. Now there's other interests in the Pacific that are highly contested. So I think having a presence here, I mean, our primary mission here at this point is really just an emergency divert airfield. So if
Right.
anyone had an emergency, they need a spot to land. So typically, it's a lot of gas and go missions, so people will land and get gas and keep going. But yeah, as far as the mission goes, it pretty much a placeholder and wait and see. So the island is um, administered by the Department of Interior, but it's managed by the Air Force under that.
Gotcha. Okay. And can you, I shouldn't say you, but can a person as a civilian who's not a Air Force contractor visit Wake Island as a tourist?
There's really no infrastructure to do that. So it is
Okay.
it's very restricted on how you get here. You have to have a reason to be here
I
because
see.
there's no services.
Right.
If you had, we do have some like biologists that will come out because it's part of the Pacific Islands Heritage Marine National Monument and Wake Island National Wildlife Monument. So
Okay.
there's uh, a million birds. I think over 200,000 birds typically, and
Wow.
sometimes a year. So all kinds of birds, and then the sea life. That we had some people out just like a month ago that were out snorkeling, and a whale shark came right up to them. So like
Wow.
a once in a lifetime sighting of seeing that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so what's your job like? What's the day to day? What is your job as an electronics technician?
Yeah, so I guess I love tinkering. I don't know if you ever did this, but back before the internet, how does this sound come out of this little radio? I didn't take everything apart, but I remember taking some things apart and just wanted to see how they worked and just understand the mystery of the electronics. So I just always remembered enjoying being around electronic stereos when I was a teenager. Um, so day to day, it's a broad. skill set that we have here. We take care of everything from the airfield lighting to the weather systems, navigation systems, our networks for the morale, kind of our Wi-Fi for everyone that works here. Um, Pretty much anything else that kind of beeps or squeaks, electronics. We may have a hand on it. Yeah.
I like that beeps or squeaks. It's funny because my last show I did last week was with a Lonely Planet editor, and she's a travel writer. And
Mm.
she was in Salinas, California at the time, and in this old bed and breakfast. And she's like, and her connection wasn't good. And she was like, why don't I shut my camera off so it doesn't interfere with my voice?
Mhm.
And we did that, and it was much better. Here you are in the middle of the South Pacific, and you've got great connection. So y'all are doing something right.
Yeah, it's that, so the networking side of things is I'm familiar with it, but I've definitely learned a ton since I've been here. And yeah, just passed my Security Plus certification, trying to get some more knowledge on that realm. But again, that just it blows me away that you and I are so far apart, and we so take for granted all the ones and zeros that make that happen in between us, and
Right.
all the
Yeah.
infrastructure. So I really enjoy that, like that, the cabling, the network side of things, like the actual physical and some of the logical connections and setting that up. So that's what I really enjoy.
And so how many folks are in your group? How many people do you work with? What's that like?
Yeah. So the technicians right now, we have three electronic technicians. One of them's off island right now, so we kind of will rotate
Rotate.
on
Yeah.
because we would need at least, obviously you need at least one here to cover the mission. So typically we like to have at least two on island. So we have to coordinate our time off and that kind of thing.
Right. And so what are the barracks dorms like? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, the it's not the Four Seasons.
Yeah.
It's more barracks. So I'm in what they call the management housing. I was in the dormitory, transitory dorms for a while. So January of 24, before I was here, they had what they call a wave event, and so occasionally we get a king tide, which is abnormally high tide. And if you time that right with a swell, we can get
Mhm.
waves onto the island, and it did
Wow.
cause some damage to some of the dorms. So typically, you'd be put into a more permanent dorm sooner on, but they're still renovating some of those. So the dorms I was in, it's just your guy side, girl side, and then you have common showers for each side there. So it was a little bit throwback to the early military days, So, but it's three hots and a cot. Like we get meals paid for and the room and board covered. So, and you got a beach view every day. It's really not that
Yeah.
bad.
I mean, do people go fishing in the lagoon too? Like what
Yeah,
what do
yeah,
folks do in their leisure time?
yeah. People do a lot of. There's the fishing, like I mentioned before, snorkeling. We got kayaks, paddle boards. Inside the lagoon, it's pretty tame.
Yeah.
Outside the lagoon, you have to be cognizant of sharks. There's things. You're definitely in apex. T- you know, territory for different things that may want to just see what you are, and we're a long ways away from help, like we mentioned before. So you have to be very diligent on checking in and out if we're going outside into the water and that kind of thing. So
Oh,
a
wow.
lot of
Okay.
beach combing. All kinds of
Yeah.
crazy things wash up here. People really like to find the old. I don't know if you've ever heard of these, but they like the glass floats from fishermen's nets. We do find those occasionally. Um, yeah, just and then I exercise. I find the remoteness here, like I don't watch TV, so try to focus on self-development and just improve my situation. So I love to run, so it's always great weather to run, except for like
Yeah.
midday, it's like stifling hot between like two
Yeah.
and 4:30 or so.
And is there a post exchange, a PX?
There is a store
A
that has the
store. Okay.
yeah. If you need some nail clippers or Advil, maybe a Monster Energy drink. I don't drink any of that, but like some of the basic, very basic things if you need it. But people can get things shipped here, so but then that you're waiting weeks, for that to come in. So it's
Right.
when you're used to clicking and getting it the next day or a day after, it's kind of a reality check.
Right. So, I mean, if you wanted to buy a beer, can you do that, or do you have to wait for that one day a week when the pub is open?
You can get. alcohol shipped here from, I think, Honolulu, but you're going to basically
Wow.
pay a markup plus shipping because they have to fly that out. So it's like $8 a pound, something like that.
I mean, a beer, 12 ounces. So
Yeah.
yeah, you're basically.
No, I'm definitely lean on the alcohol right now, so I'm cutting weight for summer.
Yeah, well, that's great. And the nice thing about having all your meals provided for and having a store where you can basically only buy nail clippers and Advil is you're making money, but you can't spend any money.
Yeah, yeah, there's that. So yeah, my last trip home though, life happens. Just before I was getting ready to come back to Wake, I realized our hydrant from our we live out in the country and we have a well, and the hydrant out in the yard had frozen. So there
Oh,
goes $3,000 in excavator fees. So
oh,
guess I
yes.
better get back to work.
Yeah, well, I've got a house, an old one at that, and there's always something. So,
There's always something. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I guess that is nice being on the island and having, really all of your needs taken care of. And then,
Hmm.
it's great. You come home into Montana and obviously you love seeing family, but then you get hit with all the stuff,
Yeah.
the responsibilities, and it's very
Yeah,
different, I'd imagine.
so uh huge kudos to my wife. Like everyone kept asking, like, oh, is she gonna be okay with you out there? I'm like, we've been married for 25 years, which I
Yeah.
missed our 25th anniversary
Congrats.
for me to come out here.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And many, TDYs, deployments, time away from home. So like the year I went to Korea, she was left finishing her bachelor's with I'm sorry, her master's in Hawaii there with three young kids and a newborn and a dog. So
Wow.
uh, I definitely owe her for all that. But she's more than capable, and like I said, we have three boys, one in college, and they definitely help out around the house.
That's great. And how long is your assignment on Wake?
So that's pretty open ended. I took
Wow.
this as a opportunity to change careers and get into something different. So how long the family wants to keep doing this rotation thing? My youngest is 13. I love all my kids. I love to be around them. So this is not ideal for
Yeah.
that. But it just makes that time when I am home. Hey, let's be very direct and let's make sure we're spending some quality time and go have some fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's almost like, and I have two young children, it's almost like you can take it for granted in a way because they're always there. And maybe you really
Hmm.
do understand and value that time more when it's truncated and you only have a couple of weeks to pack things in.
Yeah. So I came in kind of a whirlwind. I'm like, okay, let's road trip. What do you guys want to do? There I have to like change
That's
gears
awesome.
because they're in
Yeah.
their routine. I have to respect that.
Yeah.
My middle son has a girlfriend and a job, and so just trying to whatever it is, if it's working on my son's dirt bike or just working on things around the house, just making sure that it's quality time, that I'm present.
And so, what sort of background does one need to do the job that you're doing as a civilian electronics technician? Do you maintain a security clearance, for instance?
For our car, for this position, yes, there is. We do handle some uh, classified stuff, but for the most of the other jobs, I mean, it takes all types. So we have electricians, HVAC, carpenters, just general maintenance technicians. Obviously the kitchen workers and services and all those things. So there's a bunch of different jobs that are available for folks. So, but specifically electronics, um, it, the job description, I joked with the guy who was hiring me. I'm like, you're looking for a unicorn because like you want so much. So you kind of have
Right.
to be adaptable to be able to,
Yeah.
how quickly can you pick things up? So background in electronics is key, but just being able to quickly learn and adapt and like most jobs, you're not going to know everything before you get there. It's just uh, can you learn quickly? So I
Yeah.
think I'm doing okay. I'm still here.
Yeah,
So
I mean, it's not like you can call in a backup. Be like, "Hey, let me call Bob and have him take a look." You're it, and
yeah,
YouTube, I
yeah.
guess.
Yeah, so I was hired. There's two, I guess we have our electronics technicians, like IT, and then electronics technicians, just comms. So, but we cross pollinate. So the guys that are more network focused, I try to learn as much as I can just because I'm interested in it, and I also try to teach them on some of the navigation systems. So it's definitely a mutual beneficial.
So, you talked a little bit about tinkering, and maybe we could turn the conversation
Yeah,
to ham radio.
Yeah, I hope I can do my very best because I'm sure you could talk to many old-time ham folks that could tell you a little bit more about it. But I fell into so amateur radio. Um, if people don't know, like the first question I get, and when I tell them I talk on radios to people around the world, they're like, "Well, why don't you just call them?" I'm like, "Well, what's the fun in that?" Like, I like
Too
to
easy.
like since I've been here, I brought my ham radio, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I brought my ham radio here to Wake Island. Um, there's people that really enjoy contesting, so trying to make as many contacts to different, unique countries, and Wake Island is on that list. And there's not many people that, like the list of hams that have been here before is, probably about 30.
Okay.
It's listed somewhere. I don't know. But I'm proud to be amongst that and be able to share Wake Island with everybody. So typically when I'm on the radio, I'm making between 100 and 400 contacts in a couple hours. So since I got here in
Wow.
the end of November, I've made close to 9,000 contacts from around the world. Some of those are
Wow.
repeat, but yeah, it's high demand and a ton of fun. So from a radio operator perspective, it's pure chaos because sounds like everyone is trying to talk to you all at once, and you have to be it's almost meditative where you have to like focus on specific sounds and tones of people's call signs to be able to pull them out and make a contact. So yeah, I've been a ham since 2011. And growing up, my father, he was a ham radio operator. It was just normal to have this 40-foot tower in the backyard and for it to fuzz up the TV when he transmitted. But it didn't pique my interest until about 10 years later when I was kind of getting taken out of the technician role. That same mentor that told me about the job here, my friend Tom Mahan, call sign NL7RR up in Alaska. He's like, you should get your ticket. I'm like, what? You should get your ham radio ticket. It was really a good way for me to maintain some of my basic electronic things I learned at tech school and apply them on into a hobby. And then now I've come full circle since I was out of that for 10 years, doing more management things. Ham radio helped keep that spark alive. And now I'm just enjoying both working on electronics and playing ham radio.
And so can you talk like just the very basics of, so you mentioned ham radio is amateur radio. How is that different than, WNYC, your typical radio station on the dial, the FM AM?
Right.
And you mentioned these signals that you get from people. How do people contact you? Like maybe
Yeah.
just walk
It's
us through the basics.
It's all mystical, right? No, all those, yeah, between it's a radio station you're tuning into or my station that I'm operating, that's governed by the Federal Communication Commission, the FCC.
Right.
So I have to get
Right.
a license. The key difference
Mhm.
between those two, they can make money off of their broadcasts. I cannot. So
I see.
amateur radio is for hobby and it's for to be of service, community service, that kind of thing, for experimentation. A lot of technologies come out of ham radio for people that are like into other parts of electronics or networking. People have homebrewed, systems or applications that in ham radio, like there's that freedom to be able to experiment and be able to make commercial applications out of that to help other people do things. So, yeah, I don't know if I answered all that question, but
And so you
it's
said
a
you had
it's a deep ocean of information about the hobby.
And so basically you're tuning in and I guess it's an amateur radio, it's at a different signal, a different hertz than terrestrial radio.
Sure.
How
So,
does that work?
yeah, the amateur radio, we're allotted certain spectrum or frequency of, so commercial has their own areas that they can operate in. Amateur
Okay.
radio has certain bands or frequencies that we're allowed to operate in. And depending on what classification you have as far as a license from technician, general, or amateur extra, allows you more or more frequency to use and talk with
I see.
different people.
And so so you're on, let's say you're on the ham radio, it's after work hours. How would people contact you?
Yeah. So typically, what I'll do, I since I've had to create a website to, to handle some of the requests, and so I've just basically on my website I'll post, hey, this is when I'm going to be on, what band I'm going to be on. Not generally, I won't generally say what exact frequency because I don't know until the courtesy is to not just assume that frequency is going to be open. So I wait
I
to make
see.
sure that it's not being occupied by somebody else because I can't reserve a frequency. But generally, about where I'll be and when I'll be. And then there's this another thing where if somebody hears me on a frequency, there's these spotting networks. So kind of forums where people are like, hey, I hear this country on this band or on this frequency. And then that's when I know things when I get spotted. Like the other day, I was on 20 meters talking with some folks in Europe, and then all of a sudden everyone and their brother came, and I'm like, oh, somebody must have spotted me on a cluster somewhere because
Gotcha.
like everyone just showed up.
Wow. And so, I mean, you're like the hot girl.
I'm
Everybody want,
not. Girl.
but everybody wants your attention. It sounds like
Yeah, I'm the yeah.
everybody wants
Sorry,
to make a
distracted me.
connection.
Yes, yes. That's it for sure.
And
Uh,
so, when you make a connection with a person, like, I mean, is it like, somebody from Mexico is like, hola and adios? I mean, are you having a conversation with them? How does that work?
I wish it was more conversational, but because there's so many people, um, they consider it more like a what they call a distance exchange, almost like a contest where my 90% of my time, my contacts are exchanging call sign, a signal report, and see you later. It's very, very brief. Sometimes I could work 2 or 3 contacts in a minute
Oh,
if
wow.
it just lines up. So I do enjoy longer conversations. It just doesn't allow itself when you're trying to have a conversation, then other people are trying to kind of throw their call sign out there just to say hello and get my attention. So
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
And
everywhere
so,
else you can have a nice conversation, but not on Wake Island.
and tell us about the summits on the air.
Yeah, so that's probably my favorite part of. There's so many different aspects or niches of ham radio to get into. Like you can go on and on. So I'd recommend everyone to go check out if you're interested at all, go check out the ARRL website, the Amateur Radio Relay League. Um, I've got some links off of my website to kind of help folks point in the right direction on how to get started if you're interested in getting your license or just want to see what it would take. The niche, the many different things you could do with amateur radio. One thing when I was in Hawaii, I was already hiking mountains. I've always been drawn to mountains. Just love that perspective you get from being up high. And then I heard that you can bring a radio and make contacts from that. And there's a program for that. And so that program started in England, just with hill walking, as they call it, and it spread
Yes.
to Europe in the early 2000s, and then came across the pond in 2006, 2007. Started on the East Coast for people walking, doing the Appalachian Trail,
Right.
and also bringing ham radios with them. So basically, it kind of gamifies ham radio and hiking. So there's designated summits, if as long as it has a certain precedence uh, over certain summit, other hills, certain qualifying in it. Points from 1 to 10, depending on the height in that whatever the state, typically by state. And
Okay.
so it's all about making points. You make at least 4 contacts from the summit. You try to get as many as you can, but you get the points for that. So
Wow.
when I was home on break recently, I took my 2 little dogs up the mountain with me for a little 1 pointer, and I got my 4 contacts, at least my 4 contacts. I got 1 point for that. So been doing that since 2013, and I'm at about 850 points. And so if you get up to 1,000 points, then you become a mountain goat, a
All
soda
right.
goat. And then people that maybe don't have the ability or don't have the mountains around, they can also chase what they call shack sloth. So if you get your 1,000 points as a chaser, so it's good for people just that want to chase, and then also people that want to go out and activate. So it's just a different way. And I've seen so many different areas now because of trying to go get to a summit. I've seen some areas that I would never have ever have gone to before.
Right.
So I started in Hawaii and then in Colorado and Utah, taking that with me through my different assignments, and then into Montana. It's just explored. I love the exploration part of that, mixing the electronics and the adventure part of the summit seeking. It's just a ton of fun.
And so you have basically a portable radio kit that you're bringing with you.
Yeah, typically I'm bringing a radio that's about the size of a deck of cards. It runs on a 9-volt battery, and that one's just Morse code only.
Okay.
I have one that's a little bit bigger, but yeah, you're definitely trying to pack lighter, less is more. You don't need a lot because you're away from, when you're up on a mountain, you have that gain from being up high, and then also low noise because there's no electronics around you, so you
I
can hear
see.
better.
So it's like
Yeah,
climbing an antenna almost.
pretty much. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so what's you said on your blog, you said just now less is more. What's your kit like at home? What do you recommend for people getting into the hobby, starting out? What do you need?
Well, I can, find, I would recommend just finding a mentor or finding somebody who's already into it, and who's you can learn some lessons, vicariously through. When I started in Hawaii, I had this what I consider a boat anchor radio, very heavy battery.
Yeah.
My legs did not appreciate it, and my backpack was very heavy, and
Yeah.
over time, I'm just trying to slowly reduce that down, just minimal, like a simple wire antenna that you can hoist up with a fiberglass mast that's very light, or just tossing in the trees. You really don't need a lot. It's very simple once you kind of figure out the basics of it. And like I said, the elevation helps you immensely when you're trying to make contacts.
And maybe you could tell us about call signs and what they signify.
Yeah, back in the day, well, it's still if you're, I'm sorry, you're in Connecticut.
New York, Connecticut, New York metro area.
Okay, so um, if you were to get a call sign there, you would probably be designated a certain number. And then back in the day, if you moved to California, say, you would have to change your call sign to a 6. It would kind of indicate what part of the country you're from. So, yeah, Northwest is 7, down south is 4, or 4 and 5. And so you kind of have a general idea where you're calling from. And you can also get from someone's call sign typically where they're at in their um, technician general or amateur extra. So when
Okay.
you first get your call sign, it's typically going to be a 2 by 3. So 2 letters, a number, and 3 letters. And then as you get your general and amateur extra, you can apply for more vanity call signs. So my call sign, KH7AL, I got while I was in Hawaii. My first call sign I got in Alaska was KL3 FM, sorry. And I applied for the KH7AL because for my initials, and it was available, so I was able to get it.
Oh,
So
okay.
sometimes when I'm in Montana, people are like, "Oh, are you you're in Hawaii?" I'm like, "No, I'm in Montana. I just have it's a Hawaiian call sign."
Oh, wow. Okay. And so you talked about a vanity call sign. I mean, what is the highest order of call signs?
Some people have a lot of fun with those. So I saw, uh, get these little postcards from people all over, kind of confirming the calls. And so, uh, let's see, trying to think. Sometimes people will just use their initials. And I saw one guy, if you looked at it, it was WORMS, so it spelled out worms, and his call letters were worms. Um, Another colleague, Soda Guru, Steve, out in Colorado, his call sign is WG0AT. He used to hike with goats, so he really, he wanted to be W Goat.
And now, is there a signifier by country as well?
So yeah, like if France would start with an F.
I
So
see.
most of the US are either K or W or now A's.
Mm.
Um, so you can generally tell region where they're at. Japan will be a J. Australia, for instance, is a VK. So you kind of know when you hear that, you're like, oh, well, that's down south.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. And are there countries? I mean, I guess given where you are and the demand for your time and attention, you see people from all over the world. Are there countries that tend to be more into ham radio than others? Like, who are the big ham radio countries in your
Well,
estimation?
where I'm at here, I heard about the people referring to the Japanese wall. And because if you're trying to work so from my angle, short path, northwest, going up over the kind of over the pole a little bit, into Europe, I have to get through Japan. And there are a lot of very active ham radio operators in Japan, and they're very diligent, and they're strong signals because they're 2,000 miles away. So I have to get through them. One night I had about 250 contacts, and 200 of those were from Japan.
Wow.
So sometimes I have to be very specific. Say I'm only calling Europe, you know, or
Right.
break it up. Say, hey, the next 15 minutes, I'm only going to work Europe. So just try to fair share it a little bit. And that helps reduce some of the noise down as well. So I can be a better operator and work through the pile.
Wow. Okay. And would you say it's mostly men that are into ham radio? I found like most of the folks that I've met in my life that are radio operators were men.
I'd say it's, yeah, specifically to your point, as far as ability, open to anyone, any background that wants to get into it. Uh, I think it's very welcoming hobby to
Sweet.
anybody, any walk of life. So yeah, if anything, I think the ladies out there have an advantage because when the guys hear a woman's voice, they will typically respond to it a little bit quicker because it stands out in that kind of pile.
Right. And all the
So
chatter.
it's unique. Yeah.
And tell me about the FCC license. You said there's two stratifications, two qualifications.
Yeah. So the FCC, you get your URL, your universal, is that ULR licensing. So you get that basic thing, and then you would have to go to a local ham club or an online to get to test for your technician.
Okay.
Um, and the question pools are out there. They're like there's no secrets to the question and answers. The question pools are made available by the FCC, so you just find the right study program for you. If that's online, watching videos. I really like the ARRL's study guides. They're technician, general, and amateur extra study guides that will walk you through, and then have like question and answers at the end of each chapter. So you find a local ham club or something to go take your test. You pay a nominal FCC fee to get your license now. That used to not be there, but now there is. But and then within a day or so, 3, 4, 5 days, you get your call sign. They let you know your call sign's assigned and you're a ham.
Wow. And so initially your call sign is assigned to you, and it's after you progress that you can get more of a vanity,
Right.
almost license plate like call sign.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have to get your foot in the door, and then yeah, once I think even from the get go, you can at a technician level, you can apply for a vanity call sign. But
And how long is the test? How long does it take to study for?
that is person to person, how much time you have, and your background. So I'm not want to toot my own horn, but I think I studied uh, pretty diligently for about 30 days before, reading that study guide and then do an online practice test. The first test I think is 37 questions, and you have to get like a 70% on it. So it's
Not too bad.
people stress about it more than they should. So if you're doing the practice test and you're getting 80 to 90 on the test, like you're ready to sit and take the test.
And so from the first inkling of somebody who is interested in becoming a ham radio operator to passing the test, I mean, how long does that generally take, and what's the financial outlay?
Yeah. So depending again, so my local library has some study materials back in Helena. So you might want to check there. Local clubs will have, so usually will have some of those study manuals. If you go reach out to them, again, you go to that ARRL website, you can find a local club near you, and plenty of people that would help you walk that path, and they want to make it easier for people to get into it. If you look at the demographics on, well, at least on my email distro that I send out to kind of weekly updates, 60% of them are over 60. So it's an aging, but we have more hams now than we ever have. I think it's close to
Wow.
700, over 750,000 in the US thereabouts.
Wow.
And I don't know if that's proportionally gone up or not, but there's more hams than there ever have been. And there's, I think, about 3 million rough estimate worldwide.
And do you need any sort of like technical skills? I mean, obviously you come from an electronics background. I mean, does it take more of an interest than anything else, or?
I think so. I think it's more of an interest. The electronics part is important to know some fundamentals. So for safety reasons, you don't want to make sure you're positive, negative on a battery. Like you don't want to blow up your radio.
Yeah.
Basic theory on how antenna works, antenna theory, propagation. What frequencies will work when and where, and if depending on where you're trying to communicate. Like you just have a basic understanding of that through the training. That definitely helps. But yeah, I think really people that want to get into it for like emergency services, to be able to help in a disaster like we saw with some hurricanes that came through, like communications
Sure.
wiped out. Like when you don't have a cell signal, people kind of freak out a little bit. So if you don't have that backup,
Right.
um, it's just a safety net for your family to be able to, if you needed to call or help, bring help for somebody else, a friend or a neighbor. I think it's a valuable or invaluable asset to have. So
And so most of these ham radio systems are they plug in, or you had mentioned that you have the small device that uses just a 9-volt battery. Are they completely off the grid or can be?
yeah, absolutely. We have, I know several that will have like their own backup solar setup, a radio
Wow.
kind of in a
Okay.
go kit. That's
Right.
kind of more unique, but most things, just talking to your local community, you just need a little handheld radio that's authorized on the ham radio bands. And so, if you have that and a backup um, battery, like most power outages, that'll be more than enough. Beyond that, you're going to need solar or generator. For longer haul communications, like what we call HF or high frequency, you're going to need a little bit more robust radio and more battery backup. So
Okay. And in what instances would you need the high frequency?
if you were trying to talk, like say between states or, like
I
Montana,
see.
from one end of the state to the other is, like I don't know, it's a huge
Big,
state. So
it's huge state. Yeah.
yeah, so we have a net that will run on a HF frequency, so they can pass. They practice that daily, actually, just to uh, a net check-in, and anyone have any message to pass, and that's a whole hierarchy as well. So you have your local message traffic handling system. So in the
Right.
event of emergency, your local community would report that to your state or the region, and then up to the national level that they could relay messages out of that region if there was a major disaster.
Wow. Wow. And so these folks from Japan that you're speaking with or connecting with, they have high frequency systems. How does that work? I mean, and
Yeah,
anybody basically reaching out to you on Wake Island must have a high frequency system because you're, as we discussed earlier, 600 miles from the nearest
right. Yeah,
populated
all
area.
all the all those contacts are definitely on HF.
Gotcha.
Have not
Okay.
done any short range communications other
Right.
than our local radios here on the island that we have for work. But yeah, all those are and the part that I really enjoy is like different parts of the day and season, what different bands or frequencies will work differently. So a few months ago, higher frequencies, the 10 and 12 meter bands were booming. I could work Europe, no problem. When I come back, now that we're tilting a little bit more towards the sun, it's changing the ionosphere. I have to use
Okay.
different frequencies to get to Europe. So
Wow.
um, it just, there's all this energy coming from the sun that affects our world and how we communicate. And right now, I don't know if you know, we're on like the peak of the solar cycle. It's an 11-year cycle. So,
Yes.
every 22 years, you're going to have different conditions throughout that. And you just need, as a ham radio operator, you kind of have to understand that and be ready to adapt to the conditions and get it done.
I mean, it also sounds not only adapting to the conditions, but also being able to, you can really take advantage of those conditions.
Yeah, that's it. Like, people get really excited, and as much as hams get excited about that solar cycle peak, that those higher frequencies are active. And so, that 10-meter band is just right above like the CB band, which the citizens band that you don't need a license for. But to be able to make a 7,000-8,000 mile contact on 10 meters is it's doable, but it's rare and it's only in season. So this time of year, this time of that solar cycle.
And so you mentioned this ARRL website for people
Yes,
wanting to get started. All right. All
yeah,
right.
and
And that's kind of,
I really should know if that's a .net or I think it's a .org. But if you search ARRL, that I'm sure it'll be the first one people pop up and get a reference, and just a wealth of information there. Again, from educators, there's grants for educators if they wanted to bring ham radio into the classroom. People just
wow.
want to get started, or you want to create your own repeater site for your community. Like there's a wealth of information out there.
And you have a blog. How can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so just use my call sign KH7AL site. I got that there, and information about Wake Island and my upcoming activity. And the blog, I just try to do one or two a week, just things about Wake. gonna try to get into some more YouTube videos. I brought some equipment back to be able to do that because there's so much
Great.
World War II historical things I would like to be able to share with folks that are interested in that as well.
Really is. Well, Alan, it's been great having you on the show.
Thank you so much. I think I really appreciate what you're doing here. I'm a student of the PBS and Sesame Street, and I always remember that song. Who are the people in your neighborhood? And I think you're doing a great job of chronicling the great network of people we have across this country. So thank you
Yeah,
for what you're
yeah.
doing.
I mean, it's been terrific, and speaking of making connections on ham radio, it's what I'm doing as a podcaster, and it's what I really
Yeah.
enjoy. And to me, that's really the spirit of podcasting is meeting interesting people that you might ordinarily not have the opportunity to meet, and allowing for folks that aren't podcasters themselves, but just to listen in on these connections, and hopefully to be able to keep it going and really all across America. So it
All
doesn't get much
right.
further than Wake Island, right?
Yeah, for sure. So I will say aloha, and as we say in ham radio, 73.